here, and for this session, we are going to be covering how to chain fights together, sort of the stagger phase, and what actually makes up the stagger phase. The reason that we're going to do that is because I feel like it. But to give a little bit of background, most people sort of understand at this point that Overwatch has the poke or rotation phase. You poke slash rotate, those are sort of simultaneous phases. Okay, that's a thing that happens. Then we have the brawl phase or the mid-fight phase, um, or mid-fight. And that would be when the fight sort of resolves itself. That would be, okay, now the dive has happened. Maybe people rotated to set up the dive and then they went in. Or maybe, during the poke rotation phase, a brawl team walked on a team that was poking at it, that sort of thing. Rotated through tough stuff. It was getting poked while rotations were happening. Or that dive team was spreading itself out, taking the three angles that it wanted, four angles that it wanted, whatever the case may have been. The poke team was trying to contest it as best they could, and then that dive got pulled. And once they're in there, then they're in a brawler mid phase. Or once that Reinhardt comp is on top of that Orisa comp, then we're in a brawl phase or a mid fight phase, that sort of thing. And it's still a brawl phase, mid fight phase, even if it's poke v poke and two Orisas. And once the Orisas walk on top of each other, or one walks on top of the other, or drops on top of the other because one went to contest point and now they drop, and now it's sort of the mid fight that's resolving itself. So that's a thing. And then the final phase would be the cleanup or the stagger phase. So everyone is sort of familiar with those, and that's great. Stagger phase, cool, we'll do that. Everyone understands these three phases exist to some degree in Overwatch. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to dive deep into that cleanup or stagger phase there, because there's more to that. And there's a lot of focus on the mid-fight because, hey, that's when the strategy gets executed. There's a lot of focus on the setup in terms of how do you get into a position. If you as a dive team, for example, set up your positions well and then execute the very, very beginning of that brawl phase or that execution phase correctly, you're generally going to win. Very similar thing with a brawl team. If you can rotate in and not lose people, get in healthy enough, and then correctly execute the beginning of your brawl phase, maybe catch the team retreating with a Mei wall, maybe hit your off-angled McCree, something like that, you're generally going to win. Once you go up about two people or about an equivalent of two people in terms of total value, that could be resources that have been expended, ults that are available, positioning. Once you've really gone up enough, most people understand that, hey, the team fight is mostly won. It might be able to be swapped with hero plays, with huge investments of ults, things like that, but you get pretty close to dead fight territory. People might not call dead fight until a three-person difference, depends on the team, but people mostly understand that. But even though it makes sense that so much focus gets put on those first two phases in coaching videos and concept videos and how the game is played videos, there is this third phase. And everyone might think it's as simple as, oh, hey, all that we need to understand is that our team, after they win the team fight, need to go, hey, we're going to run up and chase the people that are trying to run away. Or we're going to run up and go get the person who was coming back to rejoin the fight and, then turned around too late. Or even more normal staggers might be, hey, we could be staggering in the actual team fight of we've won the team fight, but there is a baby diva that's off point, so we'll stagger her. Or a Mercy that's off point, so we'll stagger her. Or, the general concept, and we'll start to get into this. The general concept that makes up the stagger phase, your first decision is, hey, you've won the fight. You've gotten it down to just 1 to 2 people. Can you delay the elimination of that 1 or 2 people in order, and generally it just needs to be 1, in order to push back the point at which the losing team can take their next fully manned team fight, their next 6-person team fight. Baby Diva is a very common hero to stagger, whereas someone like Zarya is generally not a very good hero to stagger because she's going to keep charging up an ult you really don't want her to get. So that's like the first decision, and the decision is made, and can you safely stagger them without them getting someone on your team? Because if they get someone on your team, you haven't successfully staggered them. You've delayed when both of you can take the team fight. They can take the team fight as a 5v5, or are they in some way stopping objective progress? They have objective control, and they're stopping objective progress. It's not limited to hybrid here. It happens on Escort, it happens on King of the Hill, it happens on 2CB, but that's the first decision for staggering. But then after we've won and the other guys are deciding, hey, we're retreating from a team fight, we have to go for what we'll still call the stagger phase. I'm still going to call this the stagger phase, the main portion of it, of, hey, we need to send people forward to try to get these eliminations, because each elimination that we can get late, again, delays that fully manned defense that can be put out from, or fully manned offense that can be put out from the losing team of the previous team fight. It delays it because these spawns get separated, of course. It's a little less true in 2CP first point attack, where it changes people's spawn to 2 seconds so you can stagger them enough to delay it, but we'll ignore that for a moment. So who's going to be part of your forward stagger team? Who's going to go forward to catch these people that are trying to retreat? Well, there's a couple rules that go into that, and not even rules so much, but realities that go into it. You want fast people to go forward. Lucios, Tracers, Sombras, Reapers, Divas, those are all fast heroes, so of course they're going to go forward to try to get staggers. That just makes sense. You're also going to have people that, again, on that same token of who can get there fastest, is going to be, well, who was the furthest forward in the team fight? You have someone like Bap, who likes to position above and behind his team, versus someone like Reinhardt, who needs to be at the front of the team fight in order to be swinging, who, as the team fight resolves, is going to be the closest to the enemy spawn. Well, Reinhardt's going to go forward. That's just reality. Not because his pin takes him so far, though that doesn't necessarily hurt, but because he is in a better position to go forward, and time really matters when you're trying to catch these guys that are retreating. Obviously, you have a huge advantage in this situation. You want to push it. You want to push it as quickly as possible. There's not time to send the perfect people forward. So whoever's forward and whoever's fast are going to be people that go forward to stagger. And the reality is that with how this game works, usually it's worth it to send 5 people forward and just have one person cap. If someone's lurking, you might leave a second or even third person behind, but in most situations, one person capping is going to be the right solution. So we would send people forward to try to stagger here. And this is just an example. We can go through a dive example later if people have questions, but we'd send people forward and they'd move up at different speeds because that's how the game works. And let's say they got their stagger eliminations, and that's fantastic. And they get these two. That's what we want to see. Excellent. They got their stagger eliminations. These guys continued to retreat. Maybe these guys have gotten up to here because they're a bit slower and they weren't initially with the Lucio, and Lucio's not going to wait for them because Lucio had to go push forward, had to be ready to boot people back to slow them down, whatever. Then we're going to continue to grade and try to get the people that are now, maybe they were coming up to see if they could rejoin, now they're retreating. These would be the reinforcements. The Hanzo and the Zarya in this example would be they were in the fight, they tried to leave because they saw that they'd lost the team fight. The Reinhardt was coming back because he was the first person eliminated in the team fight. We're still trying to catch him. Maybe we catch him and eliminate him, which is great. Maybe we don't, and he gets back to safety. Doesn't really matter to me. Let's pretend, he gets eliminated. That's great. Maybe we eliminate the Reinhardt, but then the BAP, who had come out of their spawn but came out of the old spawn, is able to get out and get back to his team. But I want to be clear, he has to get back to his team. This BAP cannot, and we're using this BAP purely as an example, and we'll grab these two as well because they'd have moved to the new spawn here, back on third point, because we're using Kings as an example. This BAP cannot just go, oh, I'm on third point, so I'm safe. No, you're not. You are not safe on third point. You are absolutely not safe on third point. We can have the attacking teams, the staggering teams, the team that won the last team fight, can still be back at Archway pushing cart, can have just unlocked it and even be before Archway, and BAP is not safe just because he's on third point, just because he has a little bit of cover on third point. There's no reason for this team to stop pushing. This team has not established that it earned the ability to stop pushing. In fact, let's say this BAP now gets eliminated, and this BAP who got eliminated, great, that happened, whatever. And in this situation, our Hanzo and Zarya, who were on third, go, oh yeah, we can be pushing out. We can walk up here. Oh, wait a second. There's you guys here. Why are you guys on third? Why are you guys now on third shooting into us? Whatever. Well, this is exactly what the winning team is supposed to do. We're back basically on first still, very beginning of second with our cart, but they are supposed to push forward. They aren't likely to get staggers anymore. These guys are going to see this, and maybe they'll poke, maybe they'll use cover, that sort of thing. I don't expect these two to go down here, though it's possible they'll get picked, but you'll see what we've established is this is no longer really fishing for staggers anymore. We can think of staggers as what we did back when we'd already won the fight with the people that were there. We can think of staggers as, hey, we're going and we're trying to catch people who got too close to try and reinforce, and we catch them, and we just swarm them with 4v 3v1s, 4v2s, that sort of thing, 5v2s, whatever, swarming them, they're retreating, they're in a full retreat, they're being blown up. This isn't really looking for staggers anymore. This is sort of a poke phase, right? Like, this team probably isn't willing anymore to walk their way up like, I'll have these two in spawn, to walk their way up and actually fight this Hanzo and Zarya. Perhaps they are, and if it's safe to do so, they absolutely should, and that's perfectly fine. But they can see that their McCree and Mei are a little bit back. They'd be walking into a 3v2. These guys probably, based on the spawn advantage, have other people that are relatively close. So now this just becomes, this isn't a stagger phase anymore, though it's part of the greater stagger phase. This is now a forward poke stage, and it kind of sucks as a forward poke stage, right? We've got Lucio, Reinhardt, and D.Va. And we're probably willing to poke into this. We have a Rein shield. We have defense matrix. They're Hanzo and Zarya. The Zarya has no energy. We're still going to poke into this. And the reason that we're going to do that is we don't want to let this team, we do not want to go, oh, well, whatever, we chased you to your spawn, now we're going to back up and just give you this space. There's no good reason to give this team this space. Make this team earn this. If this team tries to walk, for example, you will happily take them out because now they're too far separated from the people who would reinforce them if you walked on them. So you're perfectly happy to do that. You also want to tax this team. You want, if this team is trying to walk back in, is trying to push, is trying to go, no, we're trying to take space so that we can be closer, so that we'll be able to stop the card earlier, you're going to say, no, you have to push through resistance. And that will cause them to pause, cause them to go, well, if we can't get a pick, if we can't do enough damage to you, we're going to have to wait until we get other resources up here, maybe like our Lucio, maybe like our Reinhardt, maybe like a Hammond that could distract you, a Sombra that could distract you, or a Tracer that could distract you, to allow us to rotate through this open space. Oh, that's good, because now this team is stuck with even less map control until they wait until they have enough people. And that's what you want. And if they do try to push forward, or maybe they do push forward once they've got people here, but say they've got these people here, they don't have either of their supports here, they're getting taxed resources. And you wouldn't let them get this close. You'd start to back out. Which is reinforcing your poke ability. But you're saying you guys have to push through resistance. You guys have to rotate up forward through resistance to get here, so that even if you do get up here to this place that you want to be on second, you're then going to have to wait on your Rein shield, or you're going to have already spent your Mei wall and it's going to be on cooldown. You're already going to have spent Zarya bubbles. We want this team to not just be able to push up for free, cheaply, whatever, because, oh, we're on third point, anything like that. We want this forward poke team to have put some pressure on them until the point at which either, hey, maybe we've hit a situation where, no, we're more likely to get picked than you, at which point, okay, it doesn't make sense anymore, or you guys have significantly gotten the resources that you need, you're rotating into us, and we don't want to let you get close enough to brawl us because we don't have the cast that we want for that, we don't have the people that we want for that, whatever. So we fall out of our forward poke phase, which we just used whoever we had available for, and we're going to fall into a forward hold phase. And in this time, this cart will have pushed a little bit more, but you'll notice where we were doing this fight suggests that this cart is still maybe only going to be like here. We slowed them down, but this cart and this BAP is still not relevant. And that's a little bit of a problem, because even if we set up the best thing in the world, and we should be using this time to set up a good defensive hold as the team that won the previous team fight. So we would look at this and we would say, hey, we took this forward poke phase. This forward poke phase was good for us, but we actually bailed early on this early poke phase, this forward poke phase, specifically to make sure that we don't weaken our next phase, because our next phase is more important than this little halvesy fake extra poke phase that we got here. And the extra poke phase, maybe we're going to get a pick. More likely, we were just going to cost them resources and delay when they could actually rotate into us, because we want to fall back into a choke that we can reasonably hold. So maybe we go like this. Maybe we go put our D.Va up here. Maybe we go tuck our McCree over here with an off angle. We put our Mei over here, something like this. And now, hey, this looks pretty good, right? Like, this looks pretty good, except for the fact that we don't have a BAP and we're going to get rolled. If these guys push with 6 and we don't have our BAP, I'm using Brawl v Brawl as an example. I will happily go over this and dive. we're going to be in a situation where, oh, wait, we can't actually win this fight. This forward hold is good. We have positioning. We've maybe even managed to take high ground. In fact, maybe we rotated our McCree out this way because we had time, and we had him take high ground up here, something like this. Doesn't really matter to me. Let's put him here. Like, we've set up this great hold that we want, but it doesn't work because we had to make a switch at some point. We had to decide how were we going to get our BAP into this because we can't actually take this fight without our BAP. So if this is a brawl v brawl type scenario, who do we want pushing the cart? Well, if we had a situation where the cart was all the way up here, I'm trying to grab it, guys, where the cart was all the way up here, where it had a sight line, we would definitely want our BAP to be the one on cart, because BAP could continue to push the cart while being somewhat removed from the fight, having reasonably good positioning, but that's not the situation we're in. So we had to make a swap. We have to make a swap of who's going to push cart, and there's a couple ways to answer this. You might be thinking, oh, Lucio is the automatic answer. We want Lucio pushing cart. People are already in their positions, definitely Lucio. Sure, if that's the case, we had to bail a bit earlier on our forward poke phase than we might like, and the reason for that is us having Lucio meant we knew we could rotate back faster, meant we knew we had Lucio to help us set up our positions, to help get people into position, so we could greed our forward poke phase a little bit longer if we had that Lucio there and kept him there. If we pulled Lucio and started rotating him during the forward poke phase, our team has to keep that in mind and bail out of their early poke phase even earlier to make sure that they fall back and don't get caught by the opposing team that has Lucio, but also to make sure that they have time to not just get to the choke, but to set up with the good positioning, with the good map control that having won the last team fight affords them. So Lucio is a good answer, and Lucio is actually a good answer for a couple reasons. Lucio can get back to the cart relatively quickly and can give BAP a little bit of speed as BAP is going forward to swap, and that does need to happen. That is usually what you're going to actually do, truth be told. But you have to be conscious of whether your Lucio was able to stay forward up there with you or not. And in this example, we had Diva, Reinhardt, Lucio as our three forward most people. That Lucio is not really going to be able to swap until he's got someone else up there, like the Mei, like the McCree, someone that has some level of poke that is making the forward poke actually do something. Because in this team, the only poke that mattered was actually our Lucio's poke for keeping back that Zarya, for putting any pressure on them. So once they get there, sure, then he goes, yeah, I'm going to transition back, or maybe he transitions back just a little bit early so that these two get some speed on their way in to that forward poke team. But the answer is yes, Lucio is going to have to go swap, and we're going to get a BAP into play, and that's going to work just fine. We have our BAP in play, our Lucio is pushing cart, and this is a 5v6 that, yes, we are generally willing to take. Obviously, specific ults situations with specific ults in terms of we have beat, etc., can potentially change things, as well as, hey, if you back in this first fight where you won it and were looking for staggers, had lost your McCree or your Cassidy, you'd have been very likely to go, hey, BAP is going to leave after the point is capped, and let the Cassidy who's coming out of spawn push cart instead, and BAP will go join the forward poke group, because BAP is quite good in the forward poke group. BAP does plenty of damage in the forward poke group. BAP is perfectly happy to go, hey, I can heal this forward group. I can shoot the other team, we can sustain in this, we can do more poke pressure, make it harder for them to advance. We're perfectly happy to do that. The reason BAP wasn't in the forward group was purely as a result of the reality of whoever was forward and whoever was fast had to go look for those staggers. That's how it works. Okay, so that's what would happen here. Perfectly valid. And if this had happened, your BAP would have stayed forward. Your Lucio would have never gone back. You could have greeted this forward poke phase even more. If this didn't happen, your Lucio probably had to bail right as your other DPS were getting close, or right as whoever was getting close. And then he needed to make sure that he had swapped in time for BAP to get up here and help contest for this next forward chokehold, because now we're going into what would now be a pretty standard team fight, except we're down a person as the team that won the last fight. And again, we're potentially willing to do this. There are some disadvantages to doing it this way, but we're generally willing to do this. And the reason we're willing to do this is we've set ourselves up with such an advantageous map control situation. We've also probably made this team pretty exhausted, where they're now going, oh, wait. Do we tuck back here to recover resources, or do we keep pushing? Because they were using things like Amp, like Zarya Bubbles, like May Walls, like BAP Shifts, like Ryan Shield to rotate in, because we were doing that forward poke on them before we fell back into these positions. That said, they will recover most of that as we fall back into these positions, because we don't want to overgreed this. It's more important that we get these good positions, and this good map control is going to ultimately be worth, in a lot of situations, the being down one. That said, once these guys actually make it clear that they're pushing in and fighting, pushing into our map control, once it's clear that's actually happening, at that point Lucio usually is going to leave his cart pushing duties and come back up and join the fight. I know that seems weird, but we're interested in putting cart pressure on the opponents to force the opponents to take the fight into a disadvantaged situation. But then once it's clear that they're actually doing so, we would like our person who was on the cart, rather than to keep pushing the cart, unless it's very clear immediately that we've lost the fight, rather than have them keep pushing the cart, we would like them to come up and join so that we can have that 6v6. And Lucio can do that quite quickly. Nice benefit of being Lucio there. So that's how that works. And then if we clearly start to win this fight, like we take out 3 of them to them taking out 1 of us, maybe then our Lucio is the team that won the previous fight, goes back and starts pushing the card again, saying, hey, it's fine, I've got this. Or if it goes hard in the other direction, he might also do that, though he might instead stay in and try to help people get out as well. So that's really how that works. And this now is basically a normal team fight again. We've now hit, once we fell into this forward hold position, we've basically hit what we would consider the beginning of a normal team fight again. The enemy team is going through standard rotations, or we could go through standard rotations. We could drop onto high ground on them. If we were a dive team, we could hit a surround as they walked through a kill box, anything like that. But this is sort of the beginning of a fresh new team fight. But you'll notice there was staggers that we had there. There was a, run forward to get staggers thing. There was a, we're going to get this extra forward poke phase. We didn't just because they were on third point hang back and be like, oh, well, isn't that cool, whatever. We went, no, we're going to make you earn pushing forward. And sometimes it'll go wrong. Sometimes their Hanzo will get a pick on you. Sometimes something will go wrong. They'll get a pick on you. You'll be too greedy, whatever. And that's bad, and you're going to want to fix that. But ultimately, yes, it is worth it to go forward, make them actually earn, make them actually group, then spend resources to push, then fall yourself back like this, and then set up your good defensive spot ahead of the cart to continue to put pressure on them. And this is complicated. You're having to do a switch between your Lucio and your BAP. Your BAP might be leaving the objective in the first place because your Mei got eliminated and is walking back across point. Again, I did this with Brawl, but I'll do this with a dive example in just a moment. So that happened. Now we're back into a normal team fight. So I've broken down our stagger phase into what people would consider sort of the real, let's get a bigger pen there. What people would consider the real stagger phase, or normal stagger stuff of, oh yeah, eliminate the baby diva off point, chase people down. People might consider that the normal stagger phase. Then into the forward poke phase, because you should set up a forward poke phase, and it happens as far forward as when your staggering sort of ended, when you stopped being able to fish, stopped being able to string together eliminations every 6 seconds, 8 seconds, 12 seconds. Once it's been about, and how long that is depends on how close to the enemy's spawn you are, but once that has happened and it's clear you're not actually getting staggers, you're now in a forward poke phase, and then you fall out of that forward poke phase. This is an extra forward poke phase. This is not where you're going to be taking the fight from. You then fall into your standard positioning, which is a forward hold, forward choke, forward map control, forward whatever, but a more permanent place that you intend to hold and take the team fight from. So that, fall back to set up your kill box, fall back to set up your good corner hold, that sort of thing. And that then is, wait, now we've hit, puts us back into the equivalent territory of the regular poke / rotate phase. So I wanted to dig in a little bit here to to what this stagger phase is actually made up of, because again, it's not something that's usually super heavily explored. So that's that. Now let's look at this with dive, because I do want to do a quick brief demo with dive just to show how that works, because dive does cause people to go, wait, but the heroes are different. Who's on cart? Is Zen on cart? And the answer is no. So let's go like this. Let's pretend that dive just won the first fight. I've put a nice dive poke hybrid comp in play here. And you could look at this and you could say, hey, we've won this team fight. We want to push forward and take space. Maybe let's give ourselves a couple staggers that we can grab again with the Zen and the Hanzo, or the Zarya and the Hanzo. Of course, this dive team is going to push forward and get these staggers. And no one is remotely surprised to see Tracer and Ball up here going for these staggers. No one should be terribly surprised to see Hanzo and Sigma trying to push up, getting these staggers. And of course, the team would get these staggers. So what do? Do you leave Brig Zen on the cart at this point? Well, maybe. You can potentially leave Brig Zen on the cart, and Brig Zen are probably going to be on the cart when you're going for this first set of staggers right here. This is a thing that's going to happen. And if your ball then quickly scouts and sees that the Reinhardt didn't get out enough, yes, at that point, your Tracer ball are going to continue to go forward, and your Brig and Zen are going to continue to push cart, or maybe just your Zen is going to continue to push cart while everyone else pushes up and gets this Reinhardt. But basically, immediately, once it becomes clear at this point that there aren't any more free staggers, easy staggers, true staggers to get, what would be, hey, we're leaving the stagger phase and now we're pushing forward to go get the forward poke phase, we're not cool with that. We're not cool with that anymore. Now, it's too dangerous. It's especially too dangerous against other dive teams to put a Zen on cart alone, or even a Zen and a Brig on cart. It's too dangerous to do that, so we're going to put Tracer back on cart. And this will throw some people off. People aren't used to not having the flex support push cart, but at this point, we're making our swap, and you're noticing as a dive team playing against another dive team here, as an example, we are going to be making our swap instead of during the forward poke phase, sort of as we're swapping between the forward poke phase and the forward hold phase. We're making our swap as soon as we've cleaned up those staggers and as soon as it's clear those things aren't there. And that's because Zen is more vulnerable than BAP. Zen is more, hey, we're concerned about. And Zen also needs more time to set up the appropriate position. This dive team does want to set up a good, strong kill box to use for this next fight. So we might go, hey, now we're going to push forward. Now we're going to try to get staggers, and let's do that. We'll push forward, try to get staggers against maybe these three that are here. Maybe they pushed forward to try to get a forward poke fight of sorts. That's great for them. They're doing what they can here with a nice forward poke phase. Good for them. But the Zen basically is immediately going, I'm slow. I don't have a Lucio. If I can contribute to the forward poke phase, that's great. But ultimately, I am going to prioritize much more heavily setting up the kill box for the next fight. Because I want to be in a place where I'm going to, once we fall into this defensive thing, and I talked about this, we're willing to defang our forward poke phase a little bit in favor of strengthening our forward hold phase. So we would see, hey, the way that this is going to be set up, I'm going to want to go ahead and set my Zen Brig up on this corner. I'm going to want to set my Zen Brig up on high ground, and I'm willing to do that right now while this forward poke phase is happening. Maybe then I'll walk forward and go try to contribute from here and then roll back, but my priority immediately for this, when we swapped with Tracer after the true stagger portion of the stagger phase, was to go set this up. And that's just going to be life. And then these guys, again, are going to go, hey, you're starting to group up. You're starting to get a reasonable number of people. I know I'm playing them into a brawl, but pretend that we're playing this into a dive. They're getting enough people. They could use we're going to pretend this is a Hammond to go contest, to go mess with them as they send their core forward. Okay, great. Well, our adjustment there is, okay, you've earned it. It's time for us to back off. And we're going to go ahead and back off in such a way that potentially allows us to go, hey, we are controlling, for example, let's actually go like that. We are controlling and using our forward hold phase. And while this has happened, maybe this is pushed up again to here. And At this point, this team is going to push in. They're going to start battling for lanes. And while it's just a lane battle, while it's just again, we'll pretend this is a mirror so that this Reinhardt is a Hammond. As this is happening, as they're pushing in here, okay, whatever, they're battling. That's fine. We'll let this be the 5v6. We'll let this sort of thing happen. If you get pushed back to a place where you can get support, so be it. Get pushed back to a health pack, so be it. Can then push back in. You're getting your Zen support, whatever. Maybe we've got a case of, hey, they're trying to go challenge there, whatever. This should immediately get blown up, so I wouldn't really be too worried about that. But, okay, that's happening. They're trying to fight their way in, and they've got, okay, now we're going to send 2 here, start to lose, get the support, whatever the case may be. And once this starts to get, okay, you've reached your tendrils out pretty decently, you've pushed out maybe to here, this sort of thing, or it looks like this dive is about to actually happen, same as before, the Tracer comes up. The Tracer's going to be weak. The Tracer's going to have spent blinks. The Tracer's going to be on a weaker angle than we'd like, but same thing. The Tracer was putting cart pressure on them to pull their engagement to happen. The Zen Brig set up earlier than we would normally see in a brawl matchup, for example, in the position that they wanted because they were slow, and the team correctly recognizes that they need to fall back into their positioning. And if they were playing into a brawl comp, for example, here, this would be a case where, because these are brawl heroes, they walk forward into what is the kill box here, and they get hit by the kill box by these heroes from 3 different sides. Tracer comes up to join and is on a weak angle, but that's life. That's how that works. So they fell back into their defensive positioning. Their defensive positioning is more around, okay, we have high ground, we have 3 different angles. Here's where we're going to trigger our dive as you walk through it if we've softened you up enough, which we will have, or we'll let you walk enough until you do that sort of thing. So that's how that works. I gave a couple different examples of that with 2 different comps. I talked about how that works. But that's really what you want to know and understand. If you guys have questions, feel like I didn't cover anything adequately, or wait, what about this situation? Wait, tell me more again about how the Brawl team is potentially going to use its BAP then Lucio to push, and how the dive team is potentially going to use its what was I going to say? It's Zen to push for a moment, but then swap to its Tracer, because Tracer will swap teams faster than Lucio will there. Like how any of that works, or anything of the sort, absolutely let me know in your chat here, or in comments below. Okay, so let's catch up on chat for a moment. Obviously, pauses need to happen between fights, like every OWL rulebook says. That is a joke. Pauses between team fights are mostly not a thing. It's a rule that mostly got made up into existence, wasn't in any of the official rulebooks until the most recent Activision Blizzard Collegiate rulebook, which pains my heart to see, because it's basically over the course of 4 or 5 years been wish casted into existence by players with this belief of, no, you can't pause during a team fight. Team fights aren't things. As I just sort of covered here, actually that does take me to a place. As I covered here, there isn't really a portion between team fights. We constantly have these 2 teams engaging. We constantly have the team that won the last team fight doing what they can to go, no, we're going to keep pressure on the other team. Be that actually getting stagger eliminations, putting pressure on them to make their rotation heavy, falling into their positions just before the other team gets there, and then triggering the dive. Like, there's a very, very brief point where neither team is in combat there that would truly be between team fights. So you can't really do that. Like, team fights are a construct in a lot of ways. Speaking of which, that does lead me to a question I want to cover, which is, when does your ult tracking happen? When does your planning happen? Great question, isn't that? When does that happen if there's never truly a team fight break? Well, the truth is you can and should actually be doing some ult tracking and some team fight planning as early as when you're getting those first stagger eliminations. Once it's become a 5v2, a 6v2, and you're chasing down that Hanzo Zarya at the beginning, you should already be doing your ult tracking. You should already be talking about what ults the opponent has, and you should start looking for what your plan is going to be. Now, is your plan potentially going to change as a result of your forward poke phase, as a result of, hey, we staggered them further? Are you potentially going to have to update information? Yes. So you might have to redo your ult tracking if you staggered them a bit harder. You might have to change your plan, but changing your plan happens all the time in Overwatch because, oh, hey, you got a new ult that you want to use. Or, oh, hey, you eliminated someone and you can see they're frustrated and they're about to make a stupid move and you want to blizzard them for it. Those things absolutely happen. So you have to do your ult tracking and your fight planning while executing this stagger phase. And that's okay, because most of this stagger phase, you're playing with such an advantage that you should still be winning, even if you've pulled a little bit of brain power off of your mechanics, off of your execution, off of your communication even, in favor of, and pulled a little communication off because you're taking up comp space for some of this stuff. That said, if you drown out your fight planning because you desperately need to call for your Sigma to shield your ball as your ball is rolling out because they got a little too greedy during it, that's fine. That happens all the time, and then we just, go, okay, back to the planning, that sort of thing. So you do have to multitask here. That's how it works. That said, yes, you are still doing your tracking and your planning in this phase. Blizzard is getting DDoS right now? Oh, unfortunate. Okay. Too bad your other 5 random teammates will never watch this video. It's okay. It's okay. You doing the right thing is the first step to everyone doing the right thing. Your team on ladder would demand for 3-man push cart. Yeah, don't care. Sometimes you'll have 3 people on the cart very temporarily after you have gotten all of the quick staggers that were to be there, but usually that would underman your forward poke team too much and isn't worth it. Like, if you're triple carting for more than 2 seconds, you're almost certainly doing it wrong and you're almost certainly giving up something important. But you can sometimes find a 1 to 2 second window to triple cart in the middle of this after you've cleaned up the staggers, as you're sort of pushing up to get that forward poke phase there. So how to do this if you're the only one who knows? So the thing is, some of this happens pretty naturally on ladder. Enough people understand that you're supposed to go forward and stagger. Not everyone on ladder, but enough people on ladder understand that you should go forward and stagger the team after you've won a team fight, that you should go try to get that retreating Hanzo and Zarya in this example, that some people should go do that. So go with them. Go with them. So it's not a throw. Support that play that they're making. And then, after you get those 2 staggers, continue pressing W, and they're right there with you, and that should encourage them to go further forward and potentially set up further. And they're not absolute fools most of the time. They shouldn't run into a 1v6 at that point, but what you're doing, they're kind of lemmings and they'll kind of follow you. So if you were on, Mercy, for example, in this situation, and you went, yeah, push forward with the team. Okay, we got the Hanzo and the Zarya. Continue to walk forward. Oh, our Mercy's going forward. I guess we should be going forward. They go get the Reinhardt. Continue to walk forward to here. And then you see 2 or 3 of them, and you tuck behind the cover, and you just go, hey, blue beam, and you hard blue beam, and you stare at your teammate, and like they sort of put it together. And hopefully they don't go in and go try to force a fight from there. That would be rather foolish. And once they start to do that, you can press the fall back command from here, the fall back line. That is a thing, a command that's in the game. Even if people aren't in voice chat, you can press the fallback, and usually that thing gets ignored because usually it's wrong, but here it would be right. And you then go, hey, you just fall back and you just set up here. And if they instead fall all the way back to the cart, well, that sucks, but let's be honest, they probably won't. Your team, you'll have DPS teammates and some teammates and sometimes tank teammates who want to be aggressive in a lot of situations. You can also talk in voice chat, but, that's who wants to do that. Okay, you've been up for 28 hours. Oh, that's a long time, Adam. Which hero always should push cart? What hero is a pro cart pusher? I've already answered that with this video. It's not a straight answer. Your flex support will often start pushing cart, but then they're going to switch with people. They're going to switch with Lucio in the situation where, hey, they're switching with Lucio because you need them up there because the cart is too far ahead. They may not switch with Lucio if the cart is in a place, and they may just stay on the cart if they can heal their team from the cart. That's your favorite situation. Or they might switch with a diva or a tracer if they're playing a different comp, and that makes more sense. Nope, Ryan is not the best cart pusher. Ryan is pretty bad in your forward poke team, but you desperately need Ryan in your forward hold setup if you have a Reinhardt on the board. So he is not a good cart pusher in that situation. That said, could you go, hey, I'm leaving my Rhine behind to push cart as your BAP leaves because your Rhine got eliminated in the fight and you know he's respawning and coming? Sure, you could. Now, your Lucio's going to just have to then go swap with him, and that's life, that's fine, whatever. Or you may go swap with him if you don't have a Lucio later when you've left the forward poke stage and are now in the, okay, let's fall back into a forward defensive hold position. Your plan kind of breaks the rule of 2 fights per point. Who says there's 2 fights per point? Like, if I can cancel team fights, I'm happy to. Spawn camping also breaks the rule of 2 team fights per point. Is that an official owl rule now too? Definitely not. Uh, Mercy spamming fallback is basically a meme. Agreed. Agreed. Gamers don't sleep, they game. Okay, I think we've covered the topic. I think we've covered what we needed to on the topic. I hope you guys understand now how to use this stagger phase, sort of the micro phases that go into it, how you can get an extra poke phase, how that slows down the enemy team from regrouping and taking back map control, how after using that, you should then set up your forward map control ahead of the objective. This does not just apply to when you're on attack. You could do this on defense, you could do this on King of the Hill. It applies after you've won a team fight. In either direction on the map, on really any map, on King of the Hill. We talked about 2CP can be a little bit weird because it's got that specific thing where after first point is unlocked, you have a situation where there's the faster respawns for defense. But other than that one fight, it applies on 2CP as well. Okay, that's gonna do it. Are cart heals ever relevant? They can be. They can be for a turtling team, 10 HP per second for a turtling brawl team against a poke team. It can help. Okay, that's gonna do it. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. If you'd like to see these topics when they're live, you can join my Discord in the description below. In there, you can go ahead and go down to the streaming area and click get notifications and react to become a watcher, in which case you'll get pings when I'm going live. You can see what the topic is. If it's something that you'd be interested in being here to discuss, to react in chat, to throw super chat money into because you think it's such a wonderful topic and you're so glad I'm covering it, any of those things. But that's going to do it for now. I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.